I'm Sabrina Trobak, and I help people who are struggling with feeling not good enough, anxiety, depression, and I've written a book called Not Good Enough: Understanding Your Core Belief and Anxiety.
You're watching Success, Motivation, and Inspiration, where we share interviews with incredible leaders who are crushing it in life and business.
Sabrina, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. It's nice to be here.
What inspired you to write the book, Not Good Enough?
Well, I started my private practice where, the basis of my model of therapy is around helping people sort through and understand that core belief: not good enough, not important, not valued. And within 6 months of starting my practice, I've had a waiting list. And I hate having to turn people away. And so I decided, well, what if I write a book to provide a resource for people who can't access counseling, can't afford counseling, have waiting lists that they're on? So it gives people an opportunity to kind of learn more about their core belief, understand their mental health in a bit of a different format.
That's awesome. Probably the most damaging mental health issue that you see is people not having that sense of self-worth or self-confidence. And I mean, I actually dealt with that a lot as a kid. I grew up in a very abusive household and I had a really hard time figuring out that hey, I actually am worth, I was created by the God that created the entire universe and I'm good enough to be around here. How do core beliefs like I'm not good enough start in childhood?
Uh, I think through exactly that, through neglect, through abuse, through violence, through even just not being able to feel our emotions. We look back at, even 10, 20, 30 years ago, we didn't really talk a lot about emotions. So all that experience of growing up in the abuse, yelling, fighting, those kind of things, we're never taught how to actually process that trauma. We're just taught push it down, pretend it's not there, ignore it. And so what happens is that core belief then just gets bigger and bigger and bigger over time because we're holding in more and more emotion. The more emotion I'm holding in, the less I believe in myself that I can handle even just basic things, like I spill my coffee and it becomes a great big deal because I'm so full of emotions already. So that just reinforces and feeds that core belief: not good enough, not important, not valued.
Now, what if so many people unconsciously live out this belief in adulthood, even though they understand maybe they understand that came from a childhood, dysfunctional childhood or whatever? And how do we change that?
Yeah, I think most people aren't really aware of that core belief and how significant it really is. We are constantly trying to prove to ourselves that what we believe about ourselves is true. So if my core belief is not good enough, I'm going to be drawn to people, experiences, perceptions that ultimately reinforce and support that core belief. And the vast majority of the time, it's unconscious. We're not even aware we're doing it. So if I'm not even aware I'm doing it, how can I do anything about it? I really can't. Right. So we see people needing a break, they go out and get drunk. So for that brief time, woohoo, everything's fun, great. They don't have to worry about anything. But then the next day, they spent money they didn't have. They said something they shouldn't have said. They broke promises to themselves or to others. They feel like garbage, ultimately reinforcing and supporting that core belief: not good enough, not important, not valued.
And I love that you mentioned basically our mind is created. It's an incredible tool. The entire purpose is to figure out what we believe and then find justification and validation for that belief. So, like you said, if you believe I'm not good enough, I'm not worth, I'm a waste of skin, you end
Right.
up hanging around people who take advantage of you, who walk on you, who treat you bad, which continues to reinforce that belief.
Right.
So I'm excited to check out your book and just hear some of how that can help. And I was looking over your website here. The landing page looks really great. It looks like you're featured on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, quite a few different locations where you can buy it throughout the U.S. and Canada.
That's
Um,
correct.
when did you actually publish your book?
It was published in August 2023. So it's been about a year and a half now that it's been out.
Can you explain the difference between trauma or the link between trauma and anxiety?
Sure. So trauma often ends up feeding anxiety. And when we look at anxiety, a lot of people think anxiety is about, the trigger. I have anxiety of heights. Well, if it was about heights, every single person on the face of the earth would have anxiety of heights. Not everyone does. So anxiety isn't about the thing or the trigger. It's about my belief in my ability to handle it. So if I believe I can handle it, I'm not going to have anxiety. If I believe I can't handle it, I'm going to have more anxiety. So if I grew up where there was a lot of trauma, that breaks down that self esteem. I feel less and less and less confident. Therefore, I'm going to have more and more anxiety. As we see people who have anxiety, we often just avoid the trigger. Well, if anxiety is my belief in my ability to handle it, avoiding the trigger just creates more anxiety. It makes it worse. So, one of the biggest things we need to do is figure out how do we challenge ourselves and actually do that trigger. Every time we do that, we're building more confidence. More confidence, less anxiety.
I love that. Can you kind of explain, or I mean, we've got hundreds of thousands of people that watch the show and read the magazine and see our covers on magazine billboards and stuff. But if you could talk to one specific person throughout this, if you're just thinking about, you could even narrow it down to age, gender, marital status, the way they vote, how many kids they've got, whether they like a dog or a goldfish. But talk to that specific person. Who is that you can really help the best as far as solving that problem?
Really what I'm looking for, where I probably have the most success with clients, is with someone who at least has a little bit of a belief in themselves that they can handle changes. Change is hard. It's scary. And if I have high anxiety, I don't want change. I have clients that choose misery for decades
Yeah.
because change is scary. So, I think anyone who's willing to say, okay, I'm going to try something different, I'm going to take that leap of faith, however small that leap might be, then there's possibility for growth. But bottom line, if you don't believe in yourself that you can handle change, if you don't believe in yourself, you have the right to change, you're not going to change.
You were saying some stuff that I wish I would have heard 25 years ago when I was trying to figure out how to get through all this when,
Yeah.
as a young guy going into college and stuff. Um, what are some common signs that someone is struggling with a negative core belief?
Lots of negative self talk, putting themselves down over and over and over again, beating themselves up, really focusing on the negative. Anger is a big one. Anger works. If my anxiety is going higher and I get angry, people back off and leave me alone. Anger works. But then I got a bit of a reputation of having some anger. And so now people just don't challenge me to begin with because they don't want to deal with the potential of the anger. So anger is a really significant one, especially in men. Anger is more socially acceptable. We've seen it for thousands of years. It's a sign of strength, it's a sign of
Yeah.
power. And so it becomes more okay. What we say about anger is it's not a standalone emotion. There's other emotions underneath anger that we don't want to feel: fear, vulnerability, anxiety, lonely, abandoned, rejection, helpless, hopeless, powerless. We don't like to feel those emotions. So when those pop up, switch it to anger. Now I don't have to feel those emotions. So anger is a very common coping strategy, but anything that we're really using to distract from feeling our emotions is usually a sign you're struggling. So struggle with alcohol, with drugs, with marijuana, pornography, stealing, lying, cheating, gambling, you name it. Those are all signs that something's going on and you're needing something to distract so you don't have to deal with what's really going on in your life.
And I was kind of giggling as you were talking about the anger being a man thing and all that. But you see, I would almost modify it, say that's a weak man thing. That's a sign of a weak man, because you see the typically the guys that are getting loud, punching holes in the wall, breaking stuff, going out, starting a fight at the bar. That is not a guy who is. I mean, it's weak because he's not controlling, doesn't even have control over himself, let alone the circumstances around him. But yeah, I was just kind of giggling about that, thinking there's so many people that think, that the alpha male thing.
Yeah.
I'm this tough guy. You're not a tough guy. You just can't. You haven't figured out how to control your emotions and the way you react to them, huh?
Right. Whenever we have to go to control as a way to try to get through a situation, as opposed to empowerment, where I believe in myself, I can handle it and I'll figure it out, it's going to look very different for sure. And, I think societal's norm of anger, of it being about this strength and power kind of thing, has done a lot of damage. And it's reinforced and supported that that's an okay decision, not realizing that it really damages relationships. It keeps everybody at a bit of a distance. And then people get upset because they're angry all the time. Then they feel lonely. No one cares about them. Well,
Yeah.
they end up creating that scenario with their anger. It just keeps everybody at a distance.
Yeah, kind of a self-replicating problem where you continue to prove yourself right that I'm not worth
Exactly.
being
Keeps
around.
reinforcing that core belief, not good enough, for sure.
Now, how do these core beliefs affect parenting and family dynamics?
Massively. They're going to have a major, major impact for sure. If I believe I am not good enough, why would I believe I'm a good enough parent? They don't match. So if I feel not good enough, it is going to reflect in my parenting for sure. So if I have two parents whose core belief is not good enough, well, guess what core belief their child's going to have?
Yeah.
Not good enough. The number one piece of parenting advice I give every parent that I ever work with is you got to work on yourself. The healthier you are, the stronger you are, the more you're modeling things that are in a healthy way, your child's going to learn those things. But if your child is learning anger, using alcohol, distance, disconnect, that's becomes their normal. That's going to be much more comfortable for them to use as ways to cope with things as well.
Now, I'm going to take a quick break here and just mention if you're watching this right now on a newer smart TV, on Amazon Fire TV, or on a regular device, pause the show, scroll down. I'm not trying to send people away from our TV show here, but pause the show, scroll down. We'll have a link to her book on Amazon. I would recommend getting a copy. You can get on their website, or if you're on the Amazon TV, just click the link down there. It'll take you to her book, Not Good Enough. It's available in paperback, Kindle, hardcover, quite a few different options. So grab the copy that you feel like is going to be easiest for you to ingest. And I would highly recommend getting a copy of it and just checking it out. What role do relationships play in reinforcing or healing these beliefs?
You know,
And how do you find it if you're single right now? How do you find a relationship that is healthy if you're in a pattern of continuously getting in the same failed relationships over and over again? How do you break that cycle and get into a better relationship?
so I mean, ultimately, the first thing you have to do is you have to work on yourself. We are drawn to people that are about at the same level we are at. So if you want a healthier relationship, you have to get healthier. When you get healthier, you're going to be drawn to people at a healthier level as well. If you're at a level where you're really struggling, you are a people pleaser, you need to sacrifice for everyone else, you're going to be drawn to someone who is more self-centered, who needs to be taken care of. But that person also feels like they always have to have the voice. They have to be the one who makes all the decisions because their partner never makes the decision. So they meet each other's needs, but they're ultimately reinforcing that core belief not good enough. The one person feels not appreciated, not valued, feels like they have to sacrifice for everyone else. The other person feels like I have to be the one in control of the relationship, doing everything, making all the decisions. I feel very alone. Both reinforce and support not good enough, not important, not valued. So, in order to have a healthy relationship, you have to work on yourself for sure. Problem with healthy
That's
relationships, too, is a lot of us don't know what they are. So, one of the homework assignments I give my clients who are looking at relationships is what is a healthy relationship? Google it, do some research, find out what that means. If I have a focus or a goal of what I'm looking and working towards, makes it much more likely I'm going to get there. Most of us have an idea of what we don't want, but then we're running from something rather than moving towards something. So we need to stop and take that time and really figure out, what do I want in a relationship? How much am I willing to be challenged? How much am I willing to challenge my partner? That needs to be a significant part of a healthy relationship.
Now, you mentioned not focusing on what you don't want to be. And that again reinforces that where if I say, I'm never going to be like I mean, my mom is phenomenal. But if you had an alcoholic mom, you say, I'm never going to be like my alcoholic mom. I'm never going to be. And the more you reinforce that, what you're hearing is be like my alcoholic mom. And pretty soon you end up being that same kind of a in that same kind of situation. You've worked as a teacher, a vice principal, school counselor. How did that all shape your current work?
I was a teacher for over 20 years, a learning assistant teacher. So I did a lot of work with small groups, working with kids that were struggling with reading, writing, organization, behavior issues. They all often struggled with confidence as well. So because they were struggling academically, they didn't believe in themselves as much, and therefore they had more anxiety. So it was just kind of a natural progression to go from, okay, I'm helping these kids learn how to read and write. My next step is, how do I help these kids become more confident in themselves? So that's when I started my own private practice, assuming that I would be working with children because that's what I've done my whole life. But once I started my own private practice, I realized it's not the kids I need to work with, it's the parents. It's much easier for the parents to pass down the information than for the children to try to push it upwards to the parent. So my focus now really is with adults, with parents. I still will work with kids, but I want to work with the parents as well, where I can help them challenge and become aware of their core belief, change that core belief, see things from a child's perspective in a different way to help them grow where their child is learning that core belief good enough, important, and valued right from a very young age.
That's awesome. I'm really looking forward to talking to you some more here. And also, I think you've got some good points. I would love to feature you on Newswire magazine.
This interview is sponsored by Newswire magazine. We celebrate the entrepreneurs and thought leaders shaping the future, those who don't just adapt, but innovate, who inspire others to think bigger, lead boldly, and create lasting change. Only a select few are featured in Newswire magazine, and for those who earn a place on the cover, the opportunities are unmatched. Your story shared with a global audience, your achievements celebrated on national billboards, reaching millions. Every leader has a story. Every vision deserves a platform. Who will rise to the top? Stay tuned. You're witnessing greatness unfold.
Hey, welcome back to Success, Motivation, and Inspiration. We're on with Sabrina Trobak. Hey, Sabrina, what originally made you decide to launch Trobak Holistic Counseling?
Towards the end of my teaching career, I was a school counselor, and I went to a workshop presented by a man named Tony Martins, who talked about suicide from that perspective of that core belief, feeling not good enough, not important, not valued. And really, at the end of the 3-day workshop, I just thought, this is what I need to do. This is a way I can provide more support and help other people in the community. And so I talked with Tony after the workshop. And after about a year going back and forth with him, he agreed to teach me his model of therapy. So I quit teaching and moved back home to actually moved in with my parents, my kids and I, for a year while we got ourselves on our feet and started my own private practice.
That's awesome. Now, how do you help clients identify their deepest limiting beliefs?
It really doesn't take much. Once you kind of show them the path, they often go there. And so once you explain a little bit, like I have people who come into counseling for a variety of different reasons: alcohol, gambling, drugs, relationship problems. And we talk about how those are actually the symptoms, not really the problem. There's something that's feeding those. And so we need to get better at figuring out what's underneath those rather than just putting band aids on top of those things. If we look at AA in Canada, the success rate for Alcoholics Anonymous is about 3 to 5%. So the vast majority of people who go to AA don't stop drinking. But of that 3 to 5% who do stop, a huge majority of them switch to anger or gambling. So if it was really just about alcohol, we'd have a much higher success rate. There's something more that's going on. I need to feed that core belief. Alcohol, gambling, anger ultimately give me maybe a bit of a break from that for a short period of time, but then ultimately end up reinforcing and supporting that core belief. So usually when I explain that to my clients, they say, yeah, that makes total sense. I can see these patterns of behaviors and I know I need to change them. And I try and I do it for, 3 weeks, 6 weeks, maybe even a few months. But then I end up kind of sliding back to where I am. We need to have balance. So if I feel not good enough and I'm trying to eat healthy or exercise regularly, it's out of balance. And
Easy to
so we end up falling
self-sabotage when you
back.
don't love yourself, huh?
Exactly. That's exactly what self-sabotaging does. It kind of says, whoa, we're out of balance here. Let's bring you back where you belong.
Now, what practical tools can someone use today to shift that not good enough to worthy and valued?
So I think one of the first things we have to do is just the awareness. Understand how often in our thoughts we're actually reinforcing that core belief. And so even just challenging it and going, oh, I did it again. I'm talking negative about myself, or I'm looking for the negative rather than the positive, or I can't wait to go home and have 6 drinks or whatever it is. That's reinforcing that core belief. So even just understanding why I'm doing what I'm doing, realizing it's coming back to that core belief, I'm starting to challenge and shift that core belief to feel more good enough, important, and valued. And so then you practice that for a while, and then you get better at kind of starting to make those choices. Do I want to make that choice to reinforce that more negative core belief? Or do I want to make a different choice and continue to build the core belief good enough, important, and valued? So it's a
So,
very slow process. I always say, took your entire life to create your core belief to where it is. You're not going to change that in 4 to 6 sessions. It takes time to rewire that brain, create new pathways in your brain of going to good enough, important, and valued.
how can parents, or how could I, as a parent, what could I do to raise an emotionally healthy child?
I was just going to say, you want to work on the emotions. And that really is one of the most important things. We all go through things and experience things. If we were able to actually sort through the emotions and work through it, it doesn't carry the weight. Everything that's happened in our past is over. It's in the past. It's gone. We can't go back. We can't change it.
Yep.
What we carry with us is the emotional impact of those events. So we need to get better at being able to label, recognize, and feel our emotions. So one of the things I always recommend is get a list of emotions. I mean, you could Google it. There's one on my website in my blog section, and print it off and put it all around the house. Put one in the kitchen, one in the bathroom, one in the bedroom, one in the car. Put one on your phone. Put those emotions list around, and then when someone starts feeling something, whether it's anger or shutting down or overwhelmed, pull out that list and read through it. The emotions you will recognize the ones that you are feeling for sure. So many of us have spent so much time pushing them down that when we try to figure out what they are, we don't even really know where to start. The other thing that makes feeling emotions challenging is it's actually very rare that we feel one emotion. It's usually a whole bunch of different emotions at the same time. So looking at an emotions list where I can list off 5, 6, 7, 8 different emotions that I'm feeling allows me to start to recognize and feel that emotion. So even when you first start, you don't even have to say it out loud. Just reading it in your own head allows you to feel it a little bit. One of the challenges with young kids is if they really haven't talked about feeling emotions, you ask them now, what are they feeling? Guess what they're going to say? I don't know, right?
Yep,
It's the,
exactly. I
the
don't know.
perfect get
Yeah.
you, right? Which it's a great way to just move on, but it also has some validity. They likely don't really know what they're feeling.
Yeah.
So
Got
talking
12
about
different things going on.
emotions, exactly. With young kids, we often suggest talking about emotions in third person to start off with. So for me to even say I'm feeling sad and lonely creates emotion. If I don't want to feel emotion, I can't even say that. But if I can say, hey, what do you think that person over there is feeling? It's much easier for me to say, oh, I think they're feeling sad and lonely. Bottom line, I don't really know what that person's feeling. What I'm telling you is what I would
Yeah.
be feeling if I'm in that situation. So it just makes it a bit more safe to be able to start to talk about it. So even, if you're reading at bedtime, stop and ask, ooh, what do you think that character's feeling? Let them talk about what they think that character
Yeah.
is feeling. You watch a show, you're at the park and you see a kid throwing a temper tantrum on the swing set. what do you think that kid's feeling? What do you think that,
Yep.
so just making it more a part of your general conversation normalizes it more, becomes more and more comfortable. After you've done that for a good period of time, likely several months, maybe even longer, then you can start pulling it a bit more towards them. What do you think you're feeling?
Yeah.
If even that is too hard, just give them the list to point to the words. So it's easier to point to the
Yeah.
words than it is for me to actually say the words out loud. Do that for a while. Then you get to that place where you can talk about emotions. But that process can take months and months and months to get to that place where I feel confident enough that I can handle talking about my emotions because I'm getting better at being able to understand and feel my emotions.
That's awesome. And this is off the topic of the emotions and just healthy living. But I would recommend if you get a chance here in the next couple of days on trobakholistic.org, maybe create a lead magnet with that list of emotions where you've got the breakdown, do your own formatting and stuff, but just you could offer that as a free, free download. Somebody can get access to that if they put in their email or, schedule a free call with you or whatever. Might be a good thing,
Okay.
but I'd like to see that be something that I just love seeing when people are putting out value like that. You're sharing so much great information with us here. And I'd love to see you be able to have that more where it's not, where you don't have to do individual calls with
Right.
each one and it's something people could just download and have access to. Why is humor such a powerful tool in healing?
Humor makes us feel a bit lighter. There's chemicals that are released in our brain that make us feel more like we can handle it. And so if you're really doing a lot of work on healing, it should suck. It's hard. The only way to really heal is you got to let all that stuff out. And so if we can balance that a little bit with some humor where we can laugh about things, it makes it feel a bit more comfortable in being able to handle it. You look back and go, "Oh, that was hard, but it wasn't so bad because I laughed in a little bit of it." So it makes us feel more confident in handling the hard things for sure.
Now we talked a little bit about the difference between men and women, and men doing the aggressive thing when they're, getting mad or whatever, not able to control his emotions. But how do men and women experience the not good enough belief differently?
I think a common one for men is the anger or the shutting down. For women, it still can be anger, but it just looks a bit different. It's more subtle. It's more passive aggressive. It's more the eye rolls, the sighs, those kind of things. Often seeing micromanaging again can be for both, but we often see that a bit more with women. Again, society has kind of said that, women's role is to take care of men. So we often see women being a bit more passive aggressive. Weren't really allowed to have much of a voice, but I still need to be in control and say things. So I'm going to find ways to try to get what I want. But then again, we also see very large amount of men that are also passive aggressive too. So there are some stereotypes that we could kind of put them in, but it's pretty blanket for men and for women.
Okay. And then now we talked about Newswire magazine doing advertising on billboards nationwide and having pretty good access there. If you could put a billboard on every billboard, I mean, if you could put a message on every billboard nationwide that everybody had to look at, what would that message be?
Something along the lines of taking responsibility for yourself. Don't focus on everyone else. That's wasted time. The only one you can control at the end of the day is yourself. And so, how do you figure out what's going on for you? The more you work on you, the more results you're going to get.
Okay, I like it. How has public speaking helped you to reach more people with your message, and how has it impacted your audience?
I think it just gets my message out there a little bit more. I have my own counseling agency and I'm getting older. It's just me. At one point, I did have a staff working for me, but I love the counseling piece of it, not so much the management piece of it. I like working with people and helping them see the shifts and figuring things out and learning things differently. When it's a staff, I'm managing staff, managing their clients. So it's just me now. And so being able to public speak, whether it's podcasts or working in the community or, going for different companies and presenting information, it allows me to kind of get that word out a little bit further for sure.
I love that. What's one message that you hope every client or listener that's watching this show right now takes away from your work?
You're worthy of whatever you want to do. The good thing about that is it's up to you. The bad thing about that is it's up to you.
I knew where that was going. That's one thing that Remington, our 8-year-old, I've been working with him a lot on, is he used to, year or so ago, had a really hard time with just constantly sad, constantly down, constantly either I'm bored or I'm sad, and we've talked a lot about how the beautiful thing about emotions is you get the ability to choose how you're going to feel. I said we could have just had dog could have just got hit by a car. We could have just lost our favorite toy, whatever. And you get to choose whether you're going to be sad about that for a minute or for an hour or for the rest of the week. And I don't know. I just think that's such a powerful thing. And I love that you're sharing all this stuff on how to actually fix those emotions, not just how to deal with them.
Right. We need to get a better understanding of, emotions are created by our thoughts. We have a thought that creates a chemical reaction that we then feel physiologically in our body. So understanding how that works allows us to better figure out how we want to manage and resolve and feel our emotions for sure.
That's powerful. Thank you so much for being a guest on the show today. And again, if you're watching this right now, click pause the screen, scroll down, grab a copy of her book. And also, if we end up featuring you in Newswire magazine, people watching this can click there. There'll be a link to your article with a call to action where they can get on and get the book, book a call, get your free download, that one sheet, whatever we end up putting on there. But I would just highly recommend getting in contact. And I really enjoyed this interview. Great. Thanks again. Thanks for being a guest on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for watching Success, Motivation, and Inspiration. This episode was designed to help you level up. See you next time.